Welcome to WinCraps Basics Part 2 Navigation. In this video I'm going to use WinCraps Pro for demonstration, but much of what I'm presenting applies to WinCraps Classic as well. There are 5 menus on the main screen: Game, Players, Action, Statistics, and Help. Because I'm just covering the basics, I'm not going to cover every item on every menu, but let's start with the Game menu. Here we see New, Open, and Save. This all applies to sessions. Whenever you save a session in WinCraps, you're saving not only the data that you've produced, but you're saving the configuration as well. So whatever bets you may have configured, what payoffs you might have, whatever colors you've set, the size of the table, anything, that all gets saved along with it. So when you reopen it the next time, you're right back to where you were. When you select New, it's going to get another little screen that's going to pop up and ask you certain things that you might want to preserve. We'll get into talking about this in detail later, but right now as a beginner, I would just leave it as it is as it pops up. You don't preserve the check stacks, but you're going to preserve previous data, and just click on OK, and then you'll be good to go. Show path is just going to show the location of various WinCraps files on your disk. Hotkeys we'll get into later. Basically, you're able to set up keys that do certain things for you. Table position, notice we have the first item here checked, auto size center. What that means is when you resize the table, resize your window, you're going to resize the table right along with it. If you don't want that, you can just deselect this. You can size the window and the table will remain static. If you want to customize the table, you choose this item here, Zoom, Rotate, Move. You can also just press Z from your keyboard. The little tool pops up. If you'll press plus, you'll increase the size of the table. You press minus, it decreases the size of the table. You can move it left and right and up and down, and you can rotate it. If you press the center button, you'll recenter the table. If you'll hold down the control key and press the center button, it centers it out and zeroes the angle out. Now there's a few other key combinations that you can use. You can read about them in the help file. Another way to move the table is to drag it. You click anywhere on the outer portion here of the rail and drag it and drop it, and it moves to wherever you go. Now whenever you drag the table or adjust it with the move tool, it's going to deselect the auto size center. Of course, you can reselect that any time that you like. Configure is going to take us to a separate screen with 10 tabs full of features for setting up the table. You can set these up to match a certain casino or certain criteria you might want to be testing out. We'll start here with the Bets tab. You can set the minimum and maximum bet, the min prop bet, max prop bet, payoff, max odds, odds allowed factors. Here we have 3, 4, 5 times odds. Calculation method, for now just leave it on auto select. You can choose how the house is going to, what bets are going to make work or not work on the come out roll, how they're going to charge for vigorish, whether the shooter is required to have a line bet or not to shoot, and some certain prop bets you can configure here. Payoffs, you can change payoffs of all the bets. Various casinos throughout the world have different payoffs on certain bets. You can change that here, or you can just experiment. Probability, same thing. You can experiment with the probability of the dice, or maybe somebody claims that something is true, and you can come in here and input it and see if it is. Or maybe you believe in influence of the dice. You can set these up and run various scenarios. We'll cover that in other videos as well. Advantage, there's really nothing to configure here, but the advantage is a product of the payoffs and the probability. So whenever you change one of those two, you're going to change something on the Advantage tab, and that's why these are all here put together. Bankroll, whenever you got some players put on the table, now you can come here and you can make some bankroll adjustments. Checks and dice, you can choose different checks, set different denominations, you can choose different dice action. You can even put the dice in a separate window, which you can move around in size, make bigger or larger. Set a simulated roll rate. Colors, pretty self-explanatory. Let me just point out a couple things here. Some of these things you'll choose, like for instance the floor. A box will appear in the lower right corner, and this will have various textures applied to that color. So you can scroll through and find some that you like, click on those, and they'll be applied to that color. If you want to get back out of it, go full to the left and click again, that will clear it. Depending upon the color, you may or may not find something interesting on the textures. You're just going to have to experiment with various colors. Forms BG1, Forms BG2, this has to do with the background color. If I'll select, for instance, red here, all my forms will turn red. Background color 2, some forms have 2 colors here. For instance, on the Bankroll tab, you can see 2 colors there. So that's where that comes into play. Comps, most casinos comp your action. In craps, that's according to the bets. Some bets are comped, some are not. You can change that in here, and you can change the computation method and the comp rate. You can read about that in the help file. Sound, fairly self-explanatory. When you do select a sound, you can test it right here just by clicking on the button next to it. Miscellaneous, we have a few items here. The notices. Whenever you do something that's not allowed, or you reach betting limits, you get certain charges or change, a little box will pop up to tell you about it that you have to acknowledge. When you're a beginner, I just leave that. Once you become more advanced and they become a nuisance, you can just come in here and turn them off. Many ways to roll the dice in WinCraps. One of them is the random number generator. There's actually 5 random number generators available here, plus several that are combinations of the previous ones. We'll do some videos on that. For now, as a beginner, I would leave this on RNG number 1, seed normally, and don't select the reseed new sessions. RNG 1 is so large, has so many numbers in it, that you couldn't exhaust them in your lifetime. So just leave it on that, and they're good for everything you're going to do. Info tips, whenever you hover over a bet, there's certain amounts of information that you can display with it. Basic font size applies to certain screens throughout the game. You can set small, as you can see here, or large. Pretty self-explanatory. Players menu, this is where you're going to add, remove, move, rename, and adjust status boxes for players. Action, this is your primary go-to menu for running sims. You can roll the dice, pass the dice, access dice roll files, the autoplay screen, auto bet screen, buy the place bet, call bets on or off, remove bets. A few other little features here. The one that I want to mention right now is the roll your own numbers. This is going to raise another little tool, a small window. You can click on this, or you can press the F12 key. And basically what this is, it's a dice roller. So you might use this for a couple of different things. Let's say you just want to experiment. You could roll certain numbers. Maybe you want to figure things out, like what happens when I make a certain bet and roll an 11. Well, you can roll an 11, see what happens. Roll a 10, see what happens. You can resize this window as you please, make it long and skinny, short and fat. When I rolled a 10 there, notice the 4-6 came up. What if I would have wanted, say, a 5-5 to come up? Well, what I can do is change this dice roller here. Just right-click anywhere over the little window, and up pops a menu. You can see here we have 11 basic numbers selected. I can choose 36 combinations, either in a triangle or a box configuration, or the individual dice. So if I'll click on the 36 combos, now I can see all the individual combinations, and I can click on 5-5 and get my hard 10. Roll counter that you can display, auto roll hyperdrive button, and a throttle that goes with it, a random button, another way to roll the dice. Now notice as I added those, the other buttons got smaller. That's because we've set the window size. You can readjust it at any time, no problem. There's also an auto roll time delay and auto stop. We'll talk about those a little later. And button color. You can change the button colors of these anytime. There are 10 statistics screens. I'm not going to get into them in detail here, but I'll show a few of them as we proceed on. The help menu, you'll probably be going to that a lot. If you click on contents, this will open the help file to the table of contents. It's a very comprehensive virtual book on craps. It's all hyperlinked. So you click on the green underlined text, and it'll take you to the various topics. And as you read along, you'll see other words that are underlined in green as well. You click on those and bounce around between the topics, go forward and backwards. It has a very comprehensive index. You can find things there, or you can type them in here to find them. If you can't find what you're looking for, another way to find something is to point at it in the main game table and press the F1 key. So if I'll point at the dice and press F1, you can see that roll the dice comes up. If I'm wondering what this big button that says off is, I point at it, press F1, up pops the marker buck. What about this thing that says the field? Point at it, press F1, up pops the field. Now what if I think that's too small to read? Well, you can press Control plus to increase the size and Control minus to decrease the size. Many screens are available in WinCraps, so almost all of them can be sized. Many of them have fonts and components they're automatically resized when the window is resized. For instance, let's take a look at the roll total screen. Here you can see when I resize the window, the components get larger, font gets larger or smaller. If you want to prevent this behavior, you hold down the control key and then you can resize the window and all components remain static. Now, why might you want to use this? Well, maybe you want to only view a portion of the screen. Let's say, for instance, here, I just want to view this little graph. I don't want to view any of the rest of it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm not holding the control key down. I'm going to size the graph to how big I would like it. Let's say I want a fairly small graph. So I do that. Now I'm going to hold the control key down, and now I'm going to make the window how big I want to fit this graph. So I'm going to make a little window over here, and I will just do something like this. And now you'll see some scroll bars appeared. So now I'll just scroll the table, the screen as I see fit, till it's just where I want it. And I can readjust the screen again, holding the control key down. There you have it. I have a nice little roll totals graph. I can put it off to the side and view it while I'm playing. Now, here's another thing to mention. Whenever you open a screen, it becomes the active screen, and it's on top. It's displayed on top. If you go back to another screen, and these two screens are overlapping, the other screen will become active, and it will become on top. So this roll total screen is going to go behind when I click on the table here. Okay. Now let's say I didn't want that. I wanted that thing to display while I'm looking at the table. Well, what I can do is I can go to back to the menu, hold down the control key, reopen the roll totals, and now it will stay on top. So now when I click on the table, it stays on top all the time. Other screens, such as the check stack screen, you can size that all you want, and it's not going to change the size of any of the check stacks. So in this case, you can use Control plus to increase the size, or Control minus to decrease the size. Now, if you forget that, it's also mentioned whenever you look at font here. It just shows smaller, larger, Control plus, Control minus. Now, 8 of the statistics screens have a little feature in the corner of them called New. So if you click on New, what's going to happen is it's going to duplicate the screen that you're looking at. So whatever I've got here, this is the Bankroll screen. When I click on New, I'm going to open another Bankroll screen that's exactly configured as this one. Now, if I hold down the Control key and press New, not only am I going to duplicate it, but it will also remain on top of the craps table at all times. So here you see I have a Bankroll and a Bankroll 2. I'll move them side by side so you can see they're both identical. But once they're open, now you can change it. You can set one for one player, another for another player. You can resize the other one. You can set new colors. You could do all sorts of different things. And they're going to be actively updated as the game plays. Any screen that is open is going to be actively updated. Now let's say I wanted to duplicate this red one. Well, now this time I will click on the red screen here, and there you go. Now I've got a duplicate of that. So let's say that I had 4 players and I want to view their Bankroll screens all at the same time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make a small one so I can fit 4 of them where I want to put them. So I'm going to make it about this big. I'm going to do Control New 3 times. So now I've got 4 little screens, and now I can position them. Let's say I want to put them over here on the right. It's just one option. Of course, you do what you want. And now I'm going to set one to player 1, one to player 2. The players could be over on the left side of the table. Maybe I want one screen to be green, and I want another screen to be blue. No problem. Set them all up there. Let's say I want to take the blue one and I want to duplicate that one. Bang. That's how that works. So I hope that all made sense. That's all I'm going to say for now. And the next time, WinCraps Basics Part 3, we'll look at players and checks. Take care. Bye.